Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. In the next half hour, we'll make a speed run through all the key business news stories you need to know about from across the African continent. I'm Ramanyang in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Here's what's in the pipeline. African investors and governments come under scathing attack for their poor response to the Ebola epidemic. As Egypt gears up for a massive investment drive, we'll be gauging its preparedness for foreign currency inflows. And what does the EU and basket weavers in Zimbabwe have in common? We'll let you find out in the course of the bulletin. Now, as the death toll in the Ebola epidemic continues to surge well past the 5,400 mark, the response by some African countries, leaders and business executives to the crisis has come under fire for being too slow. On Friday, the widow of the former South African President Nelson Mandela, Graça Machel, said the continent can solve the problem with its own means.
We are told that there are billionaires in our continent, which it doesn't seem to be a lie, it seems to be true, isn't it? We are being told that middle class is growing and it's spending, and we are spending billions and trillions now within this continent. But when some of us die, this is the response we see. Yes, as challenging as it is, Ebola as well can be prevented. Uganda managed not only to contain it. It didn't cover the whole country. It was contained in one region, and Uganda was able, to reduce the numbers of death, but more importantly, in terms of knowledge, in terms of expertise, in terms of research, I think we should have gone first to Uganda to ask questions before we go somewhere else.
Now, elsewhere, American regulators have warned investors of stock scams tied to the Ebola epidemic in West Africa. The SEC suspended trading in 4 small companies which it said have made unverifiable claims about products to prevent or treat the deadly virus. The trading suspension affected the OTC stocks of New York-based Bravo Enterprises Limited, California-based Immunotech Labs and Whole Health Products, as well as Canada-based Myriad Interactive Media. Now, the agency, the Securities and Exchanges Commission, cited a lack of publicly available information about their operations. Separately, though, it did warn that con artists may be soliciting investors and claiming to be developing Ebola treatments altogether. Let's take it to North Africa now. Egypt plans to host a conference next week in a bid to attract Arab foreign investors back into the country after they chose to stay away given the unrest that started in 2011. The government has embarked on a drive now to revive the country's economy, especially ever since President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi got into office earlier this year. Yasser Hakim has the details.
The government, along with local Chamber of Commerce and Industry, says it is ready with several projects to present to the visiting businessmen. Projects are in a variety of sectors, but those in infrastructure and renewable energy are expected to dominate the conference. What's more important, however, are the policies that would encourage investments into Egypt. Egypt had undergone major economic reforms that included reducing subsidies, increasing taxes, and crackdown on corruption. But investors say it's not enough.
We know the investors are not happy. Investment laws will be changed entirely to ensure stability for the investor. For example, pricing for energy will be fixed and bureaucracy has to end. This always keeps business away.
The government already announced it presents a new set of laws to facilitate FDIs. One important step is directly allocating land for new projects, a procedure that usually takes more than 3 years and at an extraordinary high prices. Foreign investment had dropped by 80% after the 2011 uprisings, but Gulf Arab states sustained Egypt's economy with loans and grants, and now with investments.
There is a new 2-year stimulus package in billions from Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. It will be discussed in details during the next week's conference.
بيمشي على الأسس الاقتصادية.
Furthermore, the United Arab Emirates will host the Egypt Investment Conference on the 27th of November to help encourage foreign investments into Egypt. The investment conference on the 23rd is not just seen as a gathering of Arab businessmen, but is also considered as a rehearsal for the long-awaited economic summit expected in Egypt next March. Yasser Hakim for CCTV, Cairo.
Now, in the meantime, Egypt's central bank governor Hisham Ramez has said he would address the black market in the Egyptian pound after it witnessed quite a bit of volatility from a surge in commercial demand for dollars and concerns over the repayment of a deposit made by the Qataris. Now, the pound has been sold in the official market for months at the cut-off price of about 7.14, but it shot all the way up to 7.75 on Wednesday. The rate at which banks are allowed to trade dollars are effectively determined by the result of central bank sales, and that gives the central bank control over the official exchange rate altogether. Let's get you some more insights into what's going on with Egypt's currency. We're now joined live from Cairo by Mahmoud Abdelazim. He's the editor-in-chief of Al-Ahram Economic Weekly. Thank you for your time this evening, sir. Let's start with the central bank. It did say it will take measures to calm black market rates. Do we know what these measures are and when they will be implemented?
In fact, the Egyptian government have a plan for happen at black market in Cairo. This plan continue three measures. First measure is reactivity, the mechanism for fixed action between central bank and the commercial banks to result of saving dollars for other commercial banks, so these banks can meet the needs of clients. Second measure is to make a new list including non-essential essential product and stop importing it, so lowering the demand for dollars in black markets. So the third measure is the float dollars bonds in the finance world markets about $2 billion, and use these bonds to pay for the foreign petroleum company in Egypt.
Indeed. Mr. Azim, the spread between the black market and the official rate is about 8% or so, depending on which particular day you're looking at. But as the American dollar strengthens, isn't that spread just going to get wider and wider?
Yes, this gap is already big, but this gap is not because of economical element only. There are political element and there are speculation in black markets is leading this speculation leading by of Muslim Brotherhood company. So this gap may be continue. Especially in the if the Central Bank of Egypt did not take serious measure and declare monetary policy, and the government should announce about the source of paying the Qatar loan, which is $2.5 billion at the end of November.
Indeed. Thank you very much for your time this evening, sir. We've been speaking, of course, to the editor-in-chief of the Al-Ahram Economic Weekly live in Cairo. We're still in the North African country right now. A new 27-nation free trade zone agreement merging the common market for Eastern and Southern Africa, the East African Community and the Southern African Development Community, SADC, will be signed in December, and at least as according to Egypt's Trade Minister Munir Fakhri. The tripartite free trade area deal will be signed in Egypt's capital. It's designed to put together 58% of Africa's economic activity with a GDP of about $1.2 trillion US. Businesses are expected to benefit from a harmonized trade regime that should reduce the cost of doing business across these different countries. The agreement is popularly known as the Grand Free Trade Area, and it will be the first stepping stone to the establishment of a continental free trade area in 2017.
Right now, we are preparing to hold a conference in Egypt, in Cairo, and it will be a summit conference that will be held on the 20th of December, where 26 heads of states will be coming, representing those countries. And the three economic union, the three economic blocks will merge in one huge free trade area. This is, again, 260 million consumers. It's close to 58% of Africa's GDP. And it is important for us. It is important for us because we believe that Africa is an important market for Egyptian exports. Africa is currently terminating a road that will be linking Cairo to Cape Town, that we call C2C, and it will allow to transport our exports through East Africa cheaply and efficiently, hopefully.
Over in West Africa, about 12 Ghanaian labour unions are protesting the government's decision to unilaterally appoint an official to manage the workers' pension funds. Now, the unions have formed the Forum for Public Sector Registered Pension Schemes, and they're warning that they will not stop the demonstrations until the government engages in talks about changes in management.
These public sector workers are clearly not a happy lot. They are demonstrating against a decision by the government to choose a private trustee to oversee the management of their Tier 2 pension contributions. The workers and government are sharply divided over who plays what role in the management of the pension fund, a situation that has resulted in lawsuits, strikes, and now protests.
Pensions is our right, pension is about social protection, and pensions is about all of us seated here. You cannot go to retirement and die within the next 2 minutes.
The government is not relenting despite the workers' demands, and they remain resolute.
The message is simple. We want our foreign registered schemes to work. We want them to be operationalized, which means we need the monies to enter the schemes. Let us not forget that the reforms came about because SNIT wasn't giving us enough as a lump sum. Today, the reforms have come to be established, and we expect that per what we have done, the scheme should be allowed to be operated. And we need our money now.
When I completed university, I decided to sit in this country and work, so that at the end of the day, we build this nation. Now, if I'm working and my money, which you're supposed to, invest it somewhere, is not going, then I think I reserve every right to ask.
The demonstrators include members of the Teachers and Educational Workers Union, the National Association of Graduate Teachers, and the Health Service Workers Union. Wazir Khamsin, CCTV.
Katerina Vitozzi has been following this story for quite a while now. She has the latest from Ghana.
This isn't the first protest that's been carried out by Ghanaian labour unions over the topic of their pensions. Last month, teachers and doctors' unions said that they were going on indefinite strike unless they could sit down with the government to discuss how their pensions were managed. However, at that time, the Ghanaian government declared the strikes illegal. So since that time, we have been seeing smaller protests like the ones in Accra and Kumasi, Ghana's two major cities, on Thursday. The labour unions say that they want to appoint their own fund managers for their pension funds. However, the Ghanaian government have already appointed their fund manager of choice, and they say that it is public money for the moment and that they will choose how it is managed. The opposition parties have shown their support for the labour unions, saying that if Labour manages to have the fund manager that they want, it will mean that the pensions benefits are felt by the labour and the workers themselves, rather than going in any way towards helping the Ghanaian government's coffers. Here in Ghana, the public sector workers do have a large amount of support, especially the unions, which do carry a lot of political traction. So these protests, unless there is some sort of discussion with the government, is likely to continue for some time. Katerina Vitozzi, CCTV, Accra, Ghana.
Now, there's been quite a recovery across the markets that we do track here for you on CCTV. The JSE Africa All Share Index and the All Share Index in Nigeria all up by over 140 basis points on the day. Remember, of course, this comes off the back of some pretty devastating losses earlier in the week. When we come back, we'll take you to Senegal. It's eyeing energy and agricultural investments to spur growth. And we'll also be in oil-rich Congo, Brazzaville. It wants its young people to get out of the oil sector and go elsewhere. We'll tell you how next.
Africa is on the move. It's home to 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies. We help you make sense of the fast-changing African business landscape. We take you where the business is happening.
'This report by the African Green Revolution Alliance says climate change will slash food output. Within the next 30 years, the number of malnourished people in sub-Saharan Africa could jump nearly 40%.
Minutes into the hour, you're still watching Global Business Africa. Welcome back. Now, Senegal's GDP is forecast to grow at about 5.4% in 2015, given the Ebola outbreak in some neighboring West African states, like Mali, for example. That figure, however, would have been about 0.2% higher without the outbreak. GDP growth this year is expected to be about 4.5%, up from 3.5% in 2013. Inflation is projected to climb to 1.4% in 2015 from 0.8% this year. Serine Mustafa Sene, the head of the Forecast and Economic Studies Office, said 2015's forecast growth will be bolstered by public investments in energy, agriculture, tourism and infrastructure. Senegal is one of West Africa's most stable democracies. It exports quite a bit of peanuts, seafood and phosphates. President Macky Sall so far secured pledges worth about $7.8 billion to help kickstart a development plan that seeks to diversify the economy and double economic growth rates over the next decade. Turkey's president and cabinet ministers were in Algeria in a bid to improve commercial ties between the two countries. This trip is part of Ankara's effort to shift its international focus to boosting trade with Arab states, given the delay in EU accession talks. During the visit, officials from both states agreed to increase Turkey's liquefied natural gas imports from 4 billion cubic meters to about 4.4 billion. Turkish companies will now be officially involved in the construction projects worth approximately $11 billion in the Arab nation. Algeria is Turkey's principal partner in Africa. The two countries signed a cooperation treaty in 2006. Algeria, on one hand, exports quite a bit of natural gas and petroleum products to Turkey. The latter sends back vehicles, iron, steel, electrical machinery and manufactured goods to Algeria. Let's talk about brand power now. MTN is Africa's most valuable brand, with South Africa dominating the top 10 with 7 brands in the just released survey by Brand Africa 100. Woolworths, ShopRite, DStv and Spur make up the top 5 Africa's most valuable brands. Castle and Pick n Pay are also in position 6 and 7, followed by Kenya's Safaricom and Tuskalaga and Nigeria's Dangote. As far as non-African brands go, Coca-Cola, Samsung, Nokia and Toyota are the most admired brands on the continent. The most valuable non-African brands are Apple, Samsung, Google, Microsoft and Toyota. The Brand Africa 100 survey measures and ranks the brands that consumers admire and their corresponding value. They were based on a survey done in a sample of 8 countries: Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, the DRC, Mozambique and South Africa. Onto the conference circuit now. Congo Brazzaville has held its first ever entrepreneurship forum in part of efforts to encourage more young people to seek entrepreneurship and employment opportunities away from the oil sector. Well, the country has traditionally relied on income from oil exports to fund its government operations, but so far it's failed to develop its other sectors. On What's Hot tonight, we'll be looking at the measures being taken to change the country's current economic trajectory.
The first ever Congo Global Entrepreneurship Forum took place in the capital Brazzaville, bringing together a host of experts and players in the business sector. Here, unemployed young people also got trained on basic skills on starting a business in order to reduce reliance on the country's few available white-collar jobs. The forum was organized by Congo's Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture and was aimed at inculcating a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship.
I believe that the Congolese people are starting to have the will and are realizing that there is development. They have alongside them a public sector that wants to support them. We will not stop working and we will persevere until this is realized, because Congo cannot remain on the sidelines of Central Africa.
The Congolese economy is heavily reliant on the export of oil, despite its wealth in other resources including agriculture. But few people are able to exploit the country's vast riches for reasons ranging from the lack of skills, inadequate resources, to poor policies and infrastructure.
I believe that in 2015 we'll put in place a series of measures that will go beyond fiscal policies in order to support enterprises. We are aware that we have an economy that is largely dependent on oil, but we have, however, noticed that in the last 3 years, the non-oil sectors are doing well. Indeed, in 2015, our growth percentage will approach the 10% mark. It's a good thing, and we must support the non-oil sectors, knowing that this will guarantee the stability and growth of our economy.
Participants described the event as a long-awaited platform for investors and innovators.
Setting up a business is not simple. It's a formidable adventure. We call upon the public sector and the Chamber of Commerce to support these businesses.
The Congolese government pledged to support locally based business by awarding grants and helping to facilitate some of the projects, including those based on agribusiness. Peter Kaba, CCTV.
Another positive set of numbers coming your way as far as commodities are concerned. The oil one, however, may have more to do with what's happened in one of the world's biggest oil consumers, China. Rate cut happened over there. We'll be looking at that a little later on in the bulletin. When we come back, we'll be asking a simple question. What does the EU have to do with basket weavers in Zimbabwe? The answers coming up in 16. Welcome back. The uniqueness of Zimbabwean art does continue to attract more and more admirers and buyers from across the world. That interest was on display when international designers joined Zimbabwean basket weavers to help improve their products. Tonight on Grassroots, we focus on these unique basket weavers from rural Zimbabwe.
Dozens of skilled basket weavers from Binga, Bulawayo, Lupane, Honde Valley and Masvingo in Zimbabwe are out to showcase their creativity. Alongside renowned African and European artists, they have put together art pieces to raise visibility of the country's rural visual arts. The European Union, through its National Institute for Culture, is helping the weavers to gain market opportunities on the international scene. At an exclusive exhibition, the weavers displayed the diversity and beauty of the material culture in Zimbabwe's communities, which has been passed down from generation to generation. Artists from Nigeria, Germany, France and the United Kingdom also joined the locals. Although to many, basket weaving is a pastime or a hobby, basketry continues to reflect an innovative way of empowering women and promoting entrepreneurship.
I observed those guys using the cards. They call them Scania. They're made out of scrap metals, welded together. They have some really amazing, intricate metal patterns. And I got one of the ladies who ran the home industries to get me one, and had the idea to have a Zulu hut made on top of it. So we had somebody make a welded structure underneath, and then a lot of the ladies went to the fields and cut the grass. One had a thatching experience, and there was like a real collaboration of like 6 to 8 women working on it at the same time. And now it's a mobile home. And for me, the Scania represents this way of become a tradesperson. If you own this, you become independent.
I had this idea of I've made this little collage, and it was of Queen Victoria's body with the leopard's head on it. Because also part of the project is about empowering women, because most of the weavers throughout most of the projects are actually women, so it's also an empowering project. And a lot of my work addresses this issue because in England I come from the English Gypsy Romany community, and we're quite outsiders ourselves, but also within our own community girls and women seem to sometimes lead sort of a secondary role.
This alliance aims at helping the weavers produce crafts of high artistic standards, market their wares in order to earn a living, create employment opportunities, and diversify livelihoods options for rural women.
Through this art, we flew to India and to other countries. We used to think airplanes were for the educated only. We have traveled and learnt a lot of new things to help us to market and improve our products. We also work with the youth to improve their skills, to help them secure their future and to enable them to take care of themselves going forward.
By creating market linkages for basket weavers around Zimbabwe, Unique Partners and the National Gallery of Zimbabwe are playing a significant role in improving livelihoods of communities through culture exchange to enhance self-sufficiency. Art continues to be a powerful weapon for fostering a democratic culture that promotes freedom of expression, identity development, and the empowerment of minority groups and women. Alan Kiprop for CCTV.
Now, this specific week of November will focus on one currency alone, the fall and the fall of the Naira. The central bank has been spending, according to dealers, over $150 million a day trying to defend it. Despite that, it did fall to an entirely new low today, 177.45. The question we're asking now is, just how much longer can they pull this off before they devalue? That's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. We'd love your feedback on the program. Do send it to globalbusinessafrica@cctv.com. As usual, when we're offline, Facebook and Twitter are your ports of call at CCTV News Africa. Thank you for watching. I'm making way for Mahimoto and the sports team on Matchpoint.